It's great to be with you all. Thanks so much for joining us again this evening on this special occasion around the time of the fall equinox. Now, on this topic, repeat the title again, Emulating the Cosmic in the Ancient Egyptian Royal Cubit. The Rosicrucian studies and exercise allow us to experience and apply the underlying unity of art, science, and mysticism. The key is that the experience of the consciousness of the cosmic, the universal intelligence, is a realization of all in an integrated and unified manner. As an example, we'll explore the scientific, mathematical, technological, artistic, ceremonial, and mystical aspects of the ancient Egyptian royal cubit. We'll do so by considering the various Rosicrucian laws and principles applied with this sacred and intriguing unit of measure, and the lessons of those applications for our own self-mastery and service. In this regard, I wanted to show you some images that will help attune us with the cosmic uh, and let us go deeper into this subject matter. You'll see before you now, on the right, the depiction of the ancient Egyptian god Thoth, who embodied wisdom and was said to have one who's measuring and regulating time, the heavens and earth. And he was associated with cosmic principles of balance and order. That is Mat, that underpinned this understanding of the universe. And we see indeed on the left, personified as a goddess Mat, a fundamental concept representing order and justice and truth, balance and harmony. She embodies the cosmic order established and maintained from creation onward. In this regard, we can think of our own lives in emulating the cosmic through cosmic experiences, which led to the development of these descriptions in ancient Egyptian philosophy, theology, and mysticism, in a way that they were clothing their impressions, keeping with their time. Related to that, I know later, you may be familiar with the Book of Wisdom. It was part of, and it continues to be part of the Jewish and Christian tradition, but it's in a similar spirit to Thoth and to Mat. And Book of Wisdom, 11:21, depending on the version you're using, the numbering can be changed. Thou madest all things in measure, number, and weight. This is a very profound conception that comes down to us through the ages, antiquity, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and behooves us today to keep this in mind. I know that in our Rosicrucian studies, we apply system and order, we apply laws. And these laws don't restrict us. They actually give us much more creative capacity, much more capacity to live in harmony. At this point, we'll have a brief mystical exercise to take in more of the principle of Mat and Thoth, and that all things are made in measure, number, and weight. I invite you to do a breathing exercise with me now. So I invite you to get comfortable in your chair or lying down or however you're situated. And if it's okay for you to close your eyes or bring the eyelids down so you, almost all the way so you can reduce the visual stimulation. We'll turn more inward to a more inner, innate experience of these divine principles. And let's emulate the cosmic, but also experience the cosmic. I invite you to concentrate on your breath and do what we learn in our Rosicrucian weekly studies as neutral breathing. That is neither holding the inhalation nor holding the exhalation. Just the great incoming and outgoing of air through our respiratory system. Just enjoy the gentle rhythm of the breath. You think of yourself by the shoreline of a lake or an ocean or a sea, waves lapping in, everything manifesting through number and weight and order, even our very breath. I invite you to breathe a little deeper than usual. Take in even more of that fresh air, the chemical constituents their proper proportion, numerically ordered, and the vital life force, the VLF. Feel that tingling of the cosmic essence, the positive polarity, the vital life force. You may feel it first in your fingers and then in your toes, and then start circulating your whole body. The whole of the holy temple that we are, housing the mighty master within, our true nature and guide, now and always. And if it's okay for you too, I invite you to extend your exhalation longer than your inhalation to the degree comfortable. And something quite wonderful happens. It's part of the wisdom of the holy temple. You'll feel what's referred to today as the relaxation response. Feel a degree of calming. Just continue to let go. Enjoy the relaxation. Very healing and making whole. Very enjoyable for the body, mind, the heart, our whole nature. Various spiritual traditions of the world talk about the creation of the world through the outgoing of the breath of the divine, or the logos or the word going forth. In a way, we're matching that as a microcosm mirrors the macrocosm by the law of correspondence. All of these things and more we can apply from our Rosicrucian laws and principles to feel how deeply interconnected we are to the one soul. And all the laws that we learn about are interconnected. Makes for a most highly meaningful way of life. Even more meaningful when we sense the presence of the divine within and its guidance, always there for us. Enjoy the gentle rhythm of the breath. The incoming and the outgoing of the air. In a way, it's one of the vibrations, measures, the numerical experiences we have throughout our life that we'll delve into more in this presentation on measure and weights. Soon we'll close this period of meditation. I think you'll find yourself re-energized, rested, calm, all the more active in the work and worship of the Rosicrucian Order Amorc now and always. And let us formally close this period of meditation by saying with me, so mote it be. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and we'll continue our presentation. One of the wonderful things of that deep calm of meditation is it allows us all our faculties to work together. We come into that integrated state, being one with the master within. You'll see before us now, continuing this concept of all things made in measure, number, and weight, the importance of weights and measures as a way of loathing our impressions from deeper spiritual understanding and emulating the cosmic in our environment, the mastership of life. The ancient Egyptians, but others after them, would have what was referred to as the weighing of the soul. You can see this in its essential forms even on some of the medieval cathedrals, sculptures, and later millennia, centuries. We see before us here Anubis guiding person entering the afterlife, but is actually is viewed as the initiate. And Anubis holds symbol the Ankh for life, just as we work within our breathing exercise. And this, we've seen more recent times, the soul here is being weighed against feather of Thoth, or truth. Anubis is here as assisting in the process. if we've lived our life well, if we haven't added to the weights, use expression from Confessions to Matt, an important document to Rosicrucians, where it mentions, I have not diminished from the bushel, among the many declarations from the Confessions to Matt. I have not added to the weights of the scale to cheat the seller. I have not misread the pointer of the scales to cheat the buyer. And after various other declarations of one's integrity, I am pure, I am pure, I am pure. My purity is the purity of the divinity of the holy temple. In a like manner, this is what we see before us in the weighing of the soul ceremony. And that purification that we did in our meditation, the outgoing and incoming of the breath, is also a purification that we can do on a continual basis in our life. On a similar point, leading up into our topic here, you'll see a beautiful statuette of Amun-Ra. It's from the 25th to the 26th dynasty, 700 to 600 BCE. You may have seen it in the State Museum of Egyptian Art in Munich. And you notice the great sun, Ra, is depicted in the headpiece above, a moving of Amun and Ra merged together. And it's very beautiful that we know that in the ancient hymn or ancient hymns of Amun Ra, that the chief of all gods and creator of all things, he created and sanctioned the royal cubit. So that the cubit, or this measurement unit, you'll see below here, an example, is said to have a divine origin. In a way, again, this is experiencing the cosmic and emulated in our life, whatever we're taking. I'm using the Egyptian royal cubit as an example today, but you can think of all the other things you're doing in your life to have mastery, to have harmony. Further, it's mentioned that he sanctions his royal cubit to measure blocks of stone and survey the lands and temples by the stretching of the cords. So you see, even the very measurement unit was deemed divinely ordained. Another way to look at that is an emulation of the cosmic. In a similar manner, here's another view of the very same cubit. Now, they were made from wood, and they were also made from stones such as basalt. Some were ceremonial. They were used for sacred ceremonies, I'll allude to more later on. And some were actually practically used for measurement units. For example, as I alluded to already, an important use of the cubit was what's called the stretching of the cords to measure the land, particularly to remeasure the fields after the great inundation of the Nile. But we also know that when temples were dedicated and consecrated, if there was a royal authority involved, such as the pharaoh, that would be done with the pharaoh and also an Egyptian god, where they would symbolically reenact the creation of the universe, because the temple was meant to be a microcosm, the macrocosm, the creation. One of the very intriguing things that you'll notice on the ancient Egyptian cubit that has struck me for many years, this is where it's good to always be on the lookout for deeper spiritual understanding, is that on it, on some of the ancient Egyptian cubits, there's many, many symbols. In a way, we'll find it's a compendium of knowledge, somewhat like the Hermetic rose cross. For example, you'll see a side section here of an ancient Egyptian royal cubit. There's actually the 5 sides depicted here. This one is a beveled side at B, and then the vertical side here, horizontal side D, vertical at E, and A again. You'll see sides, it could be on A or B, and A or under B here. Up on top here were gods or deities. That itself, why would they put those on a measurement unit? And it's very intriguing that with the royal cubit, it was 28 finger breadths. You'll see there's one here, count them going across here, there's 28. So there's 28 deities depicted on it. Each finger breadth or finger was consecrated to a deity. We can think of this more in modern terms as to a spiritual principle. Also on it as a compendium associated with the deities that were protectors of the different provinces or nomes of ancient Egypt are depicted here, the names of those provinces. And then on the lower part again, there's lengths for the value of calculating the sejak, or to do with the area of each province or nom. So this was something one could look up like an almanac. There's various writings in here too that were used then associated with different provinces. Here, for example, you can see depicted 1 cubit here, 3 palms, which were I should say are is a measure for 4 fingers, and then we have the two fingers. Similarly along here, each of those were used as a multiplier for how big the area of a ancient Egyptian nome or province was, based on powers of 10 of the cubit, 100 and so 10, 100 and so forth. Now, what's quite intriguing about the deity figures here, I'll have them a estimation of the different deities reading from right to left. From the first, there's Ra. You'll notice the hieroglyph, the circle with the dot in the center, which is a symbol we still use in our spiritual traditions today, in the Rosicrucian tradition. You'll notice that Isis is there, Horus is there. In fact, the first 9 gods reading from 1 up to 9, or from the right moving to the left, that's the great Ennead of Heliopolis, plus the 10th god, Horus. Then there's a sequence of gods. There was the 4 Horus's sons, and so forth across to the 28. So you see there's a making sacred, a spiritualization of the measurement unit. But Amun-Ra, the creator, made this unit as part of the creation of the universe, but also as a gift to humanity to measure, create, to as we say today, emulate the cosmic. Let's go through some other parts of this. Now, varied ancient Egyptian cubits, some weren't as elaborate as this one, some were. And let's take a look at other features of this remarkable measurement unit. For example, here, you'll see side D, which is this under part here. On the side was apotreic formula or a lateral side. That in a way is a statement to have divine blessing and ward off deemed evil. But you could say it's an invocation for harmony, and similar to how we did our meditation session today. Now, along the very top of it here, there's volume data of the calypstra. That's a time measuring device or instrument for measuring using water. And for setting the length of the hours for the day for each month of the year, they had an appreciation that the length of the days were changing. So you see, we're seeing in a way an expression of science here, but larger mystical principles involved with this divine unit. There's volume level shown here. There's also the second month, the season, a particular season. We'll also see the hour of the water in which the Indra is in the Indra phase. Further over here, we have appears to be a measurement of shadow, which gives the hour of the day. There's also the expression for the first month season. And you'll note that there's 3 lengths expressed in cubits and palms. So the priest and the scribe and the craftsperson using a cubit, they would know this would be part of their education. Again, have all this knowledge of the sacred geography of Egypt. Similarly, on another face, here we're on B, so we're on this beveled side here. You notice very interestingly, there's various measurement units, and they have different names. Many of those have come down to us in later millennia and centuries. You can see the 1, 2, 3 fingers, but then there's a palm. That's the four fingers. Again, this is based on the human body with the concept that the human is an image of the divine. And this is partly how you'd see, for example, Amun-Ra or Thoth or Mat depicted in human-like form, that the human body, which would be again taken up later in the ancient Greek and Roman and medieval Renaissance period, is in the image of the divine. And so, in a certain sense, there's the holy temple and its harmonious relation parts the whole through the hand, the double palm, the cubit length, which is the length of our forearm, and so forth, all have numerical proportions together. It's part of the system and order of the cosmos. Similarly, come here to the hand breadth for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the fist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the double palm, and so forth. The small span, the great span, the dejur, the remen. It's very interesting that the remen is actually, if you form a square, it has the sides, the remen. The diagonal will be the royal cubit. There's that one to what we'd say today as the square root of 2 relationship. And the side of the square and its diagonal was an important motif in proportioning ancient Egyptian architecture, as well as later architecture in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, medieval period. There's also very intriguing, you'll see 24 fingers. There's the shorter cubit. There was two cubits in ancient Egypt. Now the length of the royal cubit, they're working to keep it as standard. By today's measurements, use the metric system, is approximately, on average, 523 millimeters, just over half a meter. And you'll see that depicted down below here, 0.523 meters. One thing that's very intriguing about this cubit is you notice that there's divisions of the finger into a half fraction, thirds, 3/3 there, quarters, fifths, and so forth, up to 16ths. You wonder, well, why are they doing that? Are they actually taking much finer measurements? I know some of you may have worked in earlier decades with a slide rule, or maybe you work now with a micrometer or calipers where there's a calibration device. I know that there's some scholars have recently looked very closely at this particular cubit that you may have seen on display in the Louvre in Paris, France. And they've noted that if you work with the royal cubit that has these finer divisions on it, that and you use a ruler with it that has marked in fingers, you notice if you wanted to measure the distance, say this is the width of a particular vase, say, for example, you want to take the measurement of, or of a particular work of craftsmanship, across here. It's 2 fingers and a quarter, or 2 1/4 fingers, as we say today. We can see that by the quarter matches up on the ruler, gets to match up just right on the quarter here. But you notice at the same time, if we go where the 8ths are, that's 2/8, yeah, which is 1/4. And we notice that where the 12ths are here, there's 3/12. That's again simplifies to a quarter. We go to where there's 16ths, okay, there's 4/16 where the ruler matches up again on its finger breadths or fingers, 4/16 the cubit again. So if we had something else that we wanted to measure here, we could bring our ruler in to be up against it and see, okay, well, it's 1 palm, right, the 4 fingers, plus 1 finger, in other words, 5 fingers, so 1 palm, 1 finger. But then it's the little bit extra here is actually 5/16. We know that because over here, that's where, if you'll go along these lines where the fingers are marked on the ruler, put beside the royal cubit, we see that the only place that those lines where the fingers match up is at 5/16. And so we get a little more accurate measurement. This is what some scholars have recently posited as why these may have been here. It's also fascinating from the viewpoint of history of mathematics that they're working with these different fractions. Now, pulling everything together from this cubit, we see in a way the whole the whole compendium uh, before us of this, it's been known as a ceremonial cubit rod, but I sometimes quotes are put around that because it looks like it could actually have been used for practical use as well. We know that cubit rods were used for ceremonies and processions because they symbolize how Amun-Ra created system and order uh, in the cosmos. In that regard, you'll see the various elements that have come together. And there's a particular scholarly article that I give a reference to in the lower right. Um, there was many different uses to the royal cubit, and one of the ones that I think you may be familiar with is in ancient Egyptian art. There was a canonic practice of proportion, or canon of proportion, that would come down in other forms later, and some similarities to canon of Polycletus in ancient Greece, for example, or the Vitruvian canon, which Leonardo da Vinci would illustrate with the arms stretched out and the person inscribed within a square, and there's also a circle. That in a way has earlier origins in the systems of proportions of the ancient Egyptians. And there was different canonic systems. One worked with 18 high that you'll see here. And then various parts of the body and the attire would be marked where those grids are. And then you could use this to make a smaller work or a larger work. And we know this because, for example, there's some unfinished works, and you can still see the artisan or the painter's guiding lines on a grid. You can see the left side generally matching up with the right side as an example. I've put a blown up view of our Egyptian cubit here, just to give a sense that often these squares, there'd be some measured association with a cubit. It could be a square could be a half a cubit high, depending on how big a work you're doing, or a cubit high, or they could even be very small. It could be even just a finger. But again, there's system and order. There'd be these canonic ways. You have this timelessness was conveyed in Egyptian art because it had this principles of number and geometry back of it. It gives a sense of timeliness of the way that cosmic created the universe. We think of this too in a particular temple that we move in, that the divine geometricizes, and we move at right angles. Related to this, I wanted to show you a nilometer. Now, in ancient Egypt, there were along the river, there were devices for measuring how high the river was in cubits, and they're called nilometers, measurement of the Nile. And happy that the Nile divinity or Nile deity was addressed in the nilometers and dedicated to them, and there'd be ceremonies at the time to be propitious for the inundation season to come, and measurements would be taken year after year, forming a time series. And the recent heights of the Nile would then be used to make predictions about what there'd be in subsequent times. And you see that life was moving around the Nile River. Indeed, life depended on it for its flooding to then renew silt for the crops, and then the measurements would be afterwards. Now, the Copts took this up in ancient Egypt as well, and adopted in Christianity, and even had their own procession that was Christianized, that would go to the Nilometer, and prayers were said. And this would also be taken up in ancient Egypt. You see here the Great Nilometer in Cairo, Egypt, that you may have visited. It's a wonderful work of art, science, and mysticism. You see the dome, heaven above. You see various markings for the measurement units. Water, before the Aswan High Dam, water would flood in here, and there would show over the year the height of the river. And they know that if it's at a certain point of the year, they're suggested that it's going to be a propitious, a great flood was most likely coming. If I go in a little closer for you here, I'll show you. You can see the pillar before it, and there's even, in terms of spiritualizing it, there's the calligraphy from the Quran referring to the bountifulness and the this great system and order of the divine Allah is being recognized along with the Corinthian column here. So you can see that engineering was a work of art. And to explain this a little more, the ancient Egyptians also had Nilometers that were following this tradition. Sometimes there were steps along the Nile, or sometimes there were pillars like this. I'm showing you a diagram from an earlier French researcher, and you can see one of the places where water from the Nile, this would be a channel out to the Nile here, come in here. Flood up here, could come in here as well, depending with the level of the Nile. My orange marks show where they correspond in the picture to the diagram. And you can see various parts of the pillar here, the measurement piece correspond to the drawings that the French researcher did. And you can see the divisions in the units of measure up here. For the ancient Egyptians, it would be the royal cubit. So let's come back and move towards our conclusion. We've been talking about the ancient Egyptian royal cubit, but we've been using it as an example for our own lives on how to emulate the cosmic. When we've had deeper impressions from our conscience, from our intuition, or illumination, it behooves us to apply those, give them back in service. The measurement unit of the cubit was one of that because it symbolizes to the outer mind the idea of system and order that is deep within us and throughout the cosmos and in the cosmic, universal, through the universal intelligence and all natural and spiritual laws. We saw that the ancient Egyptians conceptualized their measurement units as given to them by Amun-Ra, that there was a divine purpose in the unit, that it connected to this universal harmony, so we can live out in our own life. Weights and measures were kept by priests and protected. They were viewed as something sacred. And indeed, what we produce in our own life, we can view as that we're spiritualizing our life. We're making it more meaningful and healing for ourselves and others. Also, the very act of using a cubit, as we see in later times with other units of measure, that the craftsperson was mirroring as a co-creator or as a partner of the cosmic. As H. Spencer Lewis mentioned when he was past imperator, imperator, that we use these units to build up or edify ourselves. By working and doing creations, we start to get a deeper sense of the divine creation. And that was also at work as well. So you see in various ways, number, system, and order, the units of measurement are all being used in interlocking ways to give deeper and deeper sense of connection and meaning and harmony and clothing impressions of divine and the Rosicrucian laws. We can do the same thing in our own life. We need to use our imagination and our creativity, but wonderfully, periods of meditation boost our creativity. They also clarify our mind. We think more calmly and heal. We're more able to attune with the divine within and work with it like the ancient Egyptians did with their way of life. So in summing up, I'd like to mention that the Rosicrucian studies and exercise allow us to experience and apply the underlying unity of art, science, and mysticism. And the key is that experience of the consciousness of the cosmic, that is cosmic consciousness. Experience of the universal intelligence is a realization of all in an integrated and unified manner. As an example, we've explored the scientific, mathematical, technological, artistic, ceremonial, and mystical aspects of the ancient Egyptian royal cubit. In so doing, we've considered various Rosicrucian laws and principles applied with this sacred and intriguing unit of measure, and the lessons of those applications are our own self-mastery and service. Thank you.